Let me describe someone you probably know. They spend hours scrolling through self-improvement content but never actually change anything. They know exactly what they should be doing. They can articulate it better than most people, and yet they deliberately choose not to do it. Not because they are lazy, because some part of them refuses to be reduced to a person who simply follows the algorithm, the productivity algorithm, the career algorithm, the dating algorithm, the health algorithm. They would rather suffer on their own terms than succeed on someone else's script. Now, here is the uncomfortable part. I just described a character from a novel written in 1864, Fyodor Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground. And the reason this book has survived for over 160 years is not that it is a classic you are supposed to read. It is because Dostoevsky diagnosed a psychological condition that has only gotten worse with time. If you have ever deliberately sabotaged something good in your life and could not fully explain why, this video is for you. And the book we are discussing today might be the most brutally honest mirror you will ever look into. I will link it in the description below. Grab a copy, because what I am about to walk you through will hit differently once you read the full text yourself. Most summaries of this book will tell you the narrator is a bitter, spiteful, retired civil servant living in a cramped apartment in St. Petersburg. That is technically accurate, but it misses the point entirely. The underground man is not defined by his circumstances. He is defined by his relationship with his own mind. He is hyper-aware. He sees through every social performance. He understands human motivation better than anyone around him, and that awareness has completely paralyzed him. Here is what Dostoevsky understood that most people still do not. Intelligence without action does not make you wise. It makes you a prisoner. The underground man cannot commit to anything because he can always see the counter-argument. He cannot love because he can always see the manipulation underneath affection. He cannot work toward a goal because he can always deconstruct the goal itself as arbitrary. Now think about what that sounds like in 2026. You know someone who has read every book on productivity but ships nothing. Someone who has watched hundreds of hours of relationship advice, content, but cannot hold a real conversation on a date without performing a version of themselves they saw in a video. Someone who can explain exactly why the economy is broken, why politics is theater, why social media is poison, and yet they are still sitting there, scrolling, doing nothing. Dostoevsky called this being overly conscious. He argued that excessive awareness, without the will to act despite that awareness, becomes a kind of disease. His exact framing was that a person of acute consciousness is fundamentally a person of inaction. This is the first reason you need to actually read this book, not just hear about it. The underground man's internal monologue is so uncomfortably relatable that it forces you to confront your own patterns. It is not a comfortable read, it is a necessary one. In the novel, the underground man rants against something called the Crystal Palace. In 1864, this was a real building in London. It represented the idea that science, reason, and progress would eventually solve all human problems, build the perfect system, calculate everyone's needs, and suffering disappears. The underground man's response to this vision is essentially, I would rather go insane than live in your perfect, rational utopia. Now translate that to right now. In 2026, we are surrounded by crystal palaces. Your phone's algorithm knows what you want to watch before you do. AI career coaches can map out your optimal 5-year plan. Dating apps use machine learning to show you mathematically compatible partners. Nutrition apps calculate your exact caloric needs. Sleep trackers optimize your rest cycles. Fitness apps build your perfect routine. Everything has been rationalized, optimized, and calculated, and people are more miserable, more anxious, and more lost than ever. This is exactly what Dostoevsky predicted. His argument was not that rational systems are wrong. His argument was that human beings have a fundamental need to assert their own will. even against their own self-interest, purely to prove to themselves that they are not piano keys being played by a formula. Think about the people who deliberately quit perfectly good jobs to pursue something irrational. Think about people who blow up stable relationships for no logical reason. Think about the person who knows intermittent fasting works for them and deliberately eats garbage at midnight. Think about the rise of the entire de-influencing movement, where the whole point is just rejecting what the algorithm tells you to want. These are not failures of discipline. Dostoevsky would argue they are assertions of freedom, messy, destructive, irrational freedom, but freedom nonetheless. Here is the practical insight buried in this. If you are building a life, a career, or a relationship based purely on optimization, on doing the thing that the spreadsheet says is correct, and you feel a persistent emptiness underneath it all, Dostoevsky's book explains why. You have built yourself a crystal palace, and some part of you is the underground man, screaming from the basement. The solution is not to abandon reason. It is to stop treating yourself as a problem to be solved and start treating yourself as a person to be lived. That distinction sounds simple, but this book will show you how deep the trap actually goes. The second half of the book is where Dostoevsky moves from philosophy into something much more painful: storytelling. The underground man encounters a young woman named Liza. She works in a profession society looks down on, and in a moment that begins as cruelty, he delivers this extraordinary speech to her about her future, about what her life will become if she continues on her current path. It is manipulative, it is calculated, but it is also somehow genuinely moving because in that moment something real slips through his performance. He accidentally means what he says, and Liza responds to the real part. She is moved, she opens up, she sees something in him worth caring about. Then she shows up at his apartment. She comes to him sincerely, vulnerably, honestly, and the underground man panics because he was performing. The beautiful speech was not who he really is, it was who he wished he could be. And now a real human being is standing in front of him expecting the real version of the person behind those words, and he cannot deliver. So he does the only thing a person trapped in their own head knows how to do. He destroys it. He humiliates her. He pushes her away, not because he does not care, but because her sincerity exposes his fraudulence, and he cannot tolerate that exposure. Let me bring this forward to 2026 because this scene plays out every single day now at a massive scale. We live in an era of performed authenticity. People build entire personal brands around vulnerability. They post about their mental health struggles in perfectly edited videos with background music. They talk about authenticity using scripts. They project depth as a content strategy. And then someone shows up in their real life with genuine need, genuine affection, genuine vulnerability. And they have no idea what to do because the performance of being deep and the experience of actually being present with another human being are completely different skills. The first one gets you followers. The second one terrifies you. The Liza scene is Dostoevsky showing you the price of living in your own performance. You eventually lose the ability to recognize the real thing when it arrives. Worse, you actively destroy it because it threatens the story you have been telling yourself about who you are. If you have ever pushed someone away precisely when they got close enough to actually see you, this book will not comfort you, but it will show you that you are not alone in that pattern, and more importantly, it will show you the mechanism behind it clearly enough that you might actually catch yourself next time. Here is where I want to bridge the gap between 1864 philosophy and your actual Tuesday morning. Because this book is not just brilliant, it is useful, if you let it be. Takeaway number 1. Awareness without action is not wisdom, it is a trap. The underground man can see through everything. He understands everyone's motivations, including his own, and he does nothing. This is the trap of the analysis loop. In 2026, you can spend your entire day consuming content that makes you feel like you are making progress. Watching a video about discipline is not discipline. Reading about communication skills is not communicating. Understanding your patterns is not changing them. Dostoevsky's book shows you the end game of pure awareness without commitment. It is a person ranting alone in a room, believing their intelligence makes them superior while their life collapses around them. The next time you catch yourself researching how to do something instead of doing it, remember the underground man. He is the patron saint of people who understand everything and do nothing. Takeaway number 2, your need to be irrational is not a bug, it is a feature. Stop pathologizing every decision that does not optimize your metrics. Sometimes quitting the good job is the right move. Sometimes the impractical creative project matters more than the side hustle with better margins. Sometimes you need to take a trip that makes no financial sense. The underground man goes too far, obviously. He lets his need for autonomy become self-destruction. But the core impulse he is expressing, the refusal to live as a calculated optimization of inputs and outputs, that impulse is healthy. The goal is not to eliminate irrationality. It is to choose your irrationalities consciously instead of letting them ambush you. Takeaway number 3, vulnerability is a skill, not just a feeling. The Liza scene shows that performing vulnerability and actually being vulnerable are opposites. In 2026, this matters more than ever. We have an entire generation that learned to talk about emotions from content creators and therapists on social media. The language is everywhere. Boundaries, attachment styles, holding space, but language is not the same as capacity. The underground man has the most beautiful words. He gives the most moving speech, and he cannot handle one real moment of connection. The lesson is that you build the capacity for real vulnerability the same way you build any capacity, through practice, in small doses, with real people in real time. Not by watching videos about it, not by journaling about it, by sitting across from someone and letting them see you without a script. I want to close with something that I think makes Notes from Underground the most important book you can read in 2026, and it is this. We are entering an era where artificial intelligence can do the rational thinking for you. It can write your emails, plan your schedule, optimize your finances, suggest your meals, draft your messages, and even simulate emotional conversations. The crystal palace that Dostoevsky warned about is no longer a metaphor. It is literally being built, and it is on your phone. And the question that Notes from Underground forces you to ask is, if a machine can do everything rational, what is left that is uniquely yours? Dostoevsky's answer 160 years before ChatGPT was your capacity for irrational, messy, contradictory, free human choice. Your ability to say no for no reason, your ability to love someone who is wrong for you, your ability to choose suffering over comfort because the suffering means something to you personally. That is not a flaw in the human design. That is the whole point of being human. This book will not make you feel better. It will make you see clearer, and seeing clearly is the first step to living deliberately instead of living on autopilot. One last thing, the underground man ends his notes by saying, and I am paraphrasing, that he is going to stop writing. And then Dostoevsky, as the fictional editor, tells us that the underground man did not actually stop. He kept going. That is the final joke of the book. Awareness of the trap is not the same as escape. Knowing you should stop is not stopping. So the real question this book leaves you with is not, do I relate to the underground man? You do. Everyone does. The real question is, what are you going to do differently now that you see it? Thanks for watching. Grab the book. The link is in the description. Until next time.